listen to that inner voice. The inner voice said to me, you have to write this book. And I knew I had to do it. And I think that a lot of people write books because they think, oh God, my agent wants me to write a book. Well, your agent may want you to write a book, but maybe you're meant to write a different kind of book.
Hey everyone, this is Kim O'Neill from the Every Day's a New Day podcast and live show, and you're listening to the Going North podcast with the hilarious DomBrightmon. Be sure to subscribe to his show so you don't miss any episodes, and remember, every day is always a new day.
Today's podcast review highlight comes from Eddie Rice. He's actually a past guest too. Go figure. You'll love to see it. Anyways, his review is titled High Energy Podcast, and it's a 5-star review. And he says, quote, Dom keeps each interview upbeat and exciting, packed full of energy. His interviewing style keeps the conversation moving, but balances it out with allowing each guest to tell their full story. Well worth adding to your library of podcasts. Thank you, Eddie, for that review. And now let's get on with some wonderful content again. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as GNP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, it's the Going North podcast. We got another super special awesome that can fit all three of those G's and more. Thanks to the wonderful website, podmatch.com, baby. That's right, indeed, where podcast guests get to see where the heck podcast hosts are, and reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm a cool person, gonna be on your show. And it's like, you know what? You actually are cool. You're on. So yeah. And this is one of those guests that's cooler than two cucumbers. So let me tell you a bit about her. She's a featured award-winning author, y'all. That's right, indeed. She won a prize, baby. That's right, indeed. So she's got all the blue ribbons without the bread, baby. And she's a London-based ghostwriter. So that's right, baby. All the tea and fog, and the fish and the chips, as well as a mom, a wife, and a tennis addict. So let's give it up for Miss AM in the PM and the AM again, Miss Alice McVeigh. How you doing today, Alice?
I'm fine, Tom. Great to see you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Fine with a capital F. That's right, indeed. That's right. The capital F is also for fabulous. That's right, indeed. Since she likes
I'm also very jealous because, as I just said to you, I think your background is amazing, and I'm going to swipe it as soon as I get off of this podcast. Anyway, I'm going to swipe your background. That's what I'm going to do. Anyway, yeah. So what can I say? Yeah, I'm here in London, and we are sort of neighbors. We kind of grew up close to each other, didn't we? Because you're in Baltimore and I was in McLean, Virginia. But as a matter of fact, I grew up in Asia, so I'm kind of weird. I was born in South Korea, and then I lived in Singapore and Burma and Thailand. Sorry, it's called Myanmar now. And I think that may be why I became a writer in a way, because there wasn't any English language TV in Singapore and Myanmar when I lived there. So my sister and I, we basically just read. And when we weren't reading, we were making up stories and telling them to each other. We were really close, my sister. She lives in Lynchburg, by the way. And so basically my sister and Kathy, and I said to her, I said, when I first wrote my first novel, I was 13, I said, I'm dedicating this to you, and I'm not going to show it to anyone but you. And I said, when I finally get a novel published, I'm going to dedicate it to you. And I did. So that was kind of nice, wasn't it? So when I was in my 30s and I finally got a proper publisher, a Big Five publisher, I dedicated it to Kathy because she was so good to me. No, she was also very rude to me because she's actually an editor for a living. No, she's very rude to me. What she used to write was whenever I got too sentimental, or what she thought was too sentimental, she'd write in the margin, she'd write croak. She'd write CROAK, croak, she'd write. It's amazing. I still am fond of my sister because she used to write croak in my books when I was only 13. But she's great. So, there's nothing like a sister, really, is there?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing indeed. That's right, indeed. That's the power of really speaking things into existence and having that confidence to do just that. Because, like, hey, I'm going to publish my first book, and then I'm going to dedicate it to you, sis. That's right, indeed. Even though I want to drop kick you for fun every now and then.
Hey, I think you must have a sister. You understand completely. No, the whole thing is we also had this brother, and the brother was my brother's great, don't get me wrong, but he was like an afterthought. He's like 10 years younger than we are, so he's a different generation. And we were completely different with regard to my brother, because with me, it was like, he is boring. And she was going, oh, he's so cute. And so she was like, very maternal, and I was like, go away. And but I tell you, it's amazing. The guy wound up straight, because we used to dress him up in our baby doll clothes and call him Princess Arabella. That's what we used to call him, Princess Arabella. And he does not like being reminded of it.
Oh, good. All right.
He's a great guy, I have to say. He's a great guy too. I'm very fortunate with my family.
So y'all didn't have him go to therapy. That's good.
Nah, he's a good guy. You'd have liked him.
That's good. That's what I'm talking about indeed. That's what I'm talking about indeed. It's actually interesting too, because if I'm not mistaken, yeah, your father was an American diplomat too, so I guess that's what led to all the travels across the weird countries.
Well, yeah. I mean, what happened was my dad, he was in the CIA, and my mom, she was in the CIA. And he looked across the cafeteria in Langley, which is not a million miles from where you are in Baltimore, and where I grew up as a teenager. And he said, that's the woman I'm going to marry. And she said, no, go away. I'm in love with somebody else. But he persuaded her. And he only died last year. They had the best marriage ever.
Oh,
And he was 90. And the last thing he said to me was, look after your mother. And no, it was really a complete amazing story. But he was convinced from the moment he saw her, said, that one is the one I'm going to marry. And she was going to go away. So you couldn't make it up, could you really? And they met in the CIA, and then he became a diplomat. He went off to Asia, and she was going, I don't want to live in Asia. And he was going, yes, you are. So, but she won in the end, because when I was 12 and my sister was 11, she said the girls aren't being educated properly. And that was true, by the way. We were being educated impossibly badly. So she said, we've got to go back to America, because she was a bit fed up. So she got her way, and we came back to America. I was 13 then. And that was tough for me, I have to say. I came from the international school in Myanmar, which had, get this, 6 people in my class. I'm still close to 2 of them. And I came to an intermediate school in Fairfax County, Virginia, where there were 400 people in my year. And I thought, I can't do this. I just had a sort of mini breakdown in it. And I thought, I can't deal with this. And I went to my mother and I said, I just can't cope. I can't cope with the school. Anyway, so she listened to me, and she said, what would make it better? And I thought, tell you what I do want to do that I couldn't do when I was living in Myanmar, or Singapore even, was I want to play the cello. So they bought me a cello, and that kind of saved me, because it turned out I was quite good at the cello. And so I'm a professional now. And that was the great thing about being in America, was I could learn the cello. It's a great instrument.
yes, indeed. And big, too. That's right. It is Wheaties.
Big, and it's got a voice like yours. It's got a rich, deep, golden voice. And that's what I love about it. I mean, as I'm a woman, I've got this pathetic little squeaky voice, but I always wanted that rich, deep sound. And that's what's so great about Shane. It's just fantastic. So I went to college in America, music college. And then I thought, I really want to travel again. So I thought, I want to go study in Britain. I want to study with my heroine, Jacqueline Dupre. And the reason she was my hero was, A, she was beautiful. She had long golden hair, a beautiful figure. And the first time I saw her, she was playing the Dvorak concerto in a blue dress, fantastic dress. I mean, you wouldn't wear it these days, a bit old fashioned, like Princess Diana's wedding dress, really, only blue. But I've never forgotten that. I thought, that is what I want to do, is I want a dress like that, play the cello like that. So I wrote to her, and well, I didn't write to her actually, but we have a mutual friend who, a Hungarian guy, and he wrote to her and he said, she's really good, you should take her on. So I sent a tape to her and she accepted me. So I came to London to study with my heroine. But it kind of went a little bit funny then, because she was, this is so sad, she was only in her 30s. I was 21. And she had multiple sclerosis and couldn't play cello professionally anymore. So I had only about 4 lessons with her. And then she said, I'm really sorry. But all of you, not just me, but the remaining, she had about 10 pupils. We were mostly internationals. There was a Japanese guy. There was a Hungarian guy. Anyway, you're all going to go study with my cello daddy. And we thought, well, we've heard of him, but he's not famous. But he was the most amazing teacher. He was like another grandfather to me. His name was William Pleat. And he taught her all she knew. And she did me a huge favor there, really. because she was so ill. So then he taught me, and then I fell in love with my husband. And I rang up my mother, and I said, I'm going to stay. I'm going to get married to this Englishman. I'm going to stay. And she burst into tears. And anyway, no, she didn't. When she met him, she really liked him, and so did my dad, who, as I say, is now no longer with us. And yeah, so it was really one of those things. I came for a year, and that was over 30 years ago, and I'm still here.
All righty, then. That's what I'm talking about. That's right. He's a master of persuasion, won over both parents. That's what I'm talking about. Indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. It's probably the English accent. That's right, indeed. That's probably what it was. It wins us over every time.
Well, it's funny you should say that. When my accent's in the middle of the ocean. When I'm here and I meet somebody new, they say, "Oh, you're American. Oh, nice to meet American." If I'm in America, they go, "Oh my God, you've got to be British." I'm going, "No, I'm in the middle of the ocean. I'm nowhere." But anyway, there you go. It just depends on your perspective. So what can I say? Anyway, what else can I say? Yeah, it's I've now got 2 passports, which is really handy. So you go through the fast queue in one direction and fast queue in the other direction, or at least you did before COVID. And it's lovely in a way to be both. But in other ways, you do feel a little stuck in the middle of the ocean. And somebody said to me, "Which are you more?" And I said, "I really think I am stuck in the middle of the ocean." So is my accent. Anyway, so yeah, what happened about my cello playing was I was playing my cello, and I love playing my cello, and I was doing really well for a while, and then I got kind of stuck, and I was in my 30s, and I was in for a child. I was having IVF, and it wasn't working, and we really, really wanted a child. And then I got really depressed, and I thought, right, I've had it with this cello. It's not making me happy. I'm going to go back to writing, which I did as a child. And so I was incredibly lucky. I got an agent, my 3rd agent I got, and she's an amazing agent. She said, "Book her Prizewinning." And she got me a contract within about a month. And suddenly I had a contract for 2 novels. And the first one really went well, and I got to number 35 in the bestseller list. The second one went well, and they sold the film rights, so it didn't get made. I still sold the film rights, which is kind of cool. And then the 3rd one I couldn't finish. I was too depressed because I couldn't get pregnant, and I failed. I didn't produce it. And so my agent dumped me and my publisher dumped me, and I was just suicidal, basically. And then the most amazing miracle happened, which is that the last IVF worked, and suddenly I was so happy. So that was really lucky. And so then what I did was I decided, right, I want to be here for this kid. I've waited long enough, waited ages. So, and she was so slow coming out. We had to induce her. She didn't even want to pop out. So basically, finally I had this kid, and I wanted to be with her. And so I didn't want to charge around the world playing cello with orchestras. So I thought, I'll do ghostwriting. And that's a really interesting thing, ghostwriting, because what you do is you sublimate your own creativity, and you sort of become like a chameleon. You take on the character that you're writing for, the author that you're writing for. It's normally a memoir, but it isn't always. And so there's this guy who's a billionaire. He hired me to write a novel he'd always wanted to write. And that was so weird. He told me every scene and everything that happened at every scene. And I thought, but you're giving me all the fun bits. What you're doing is the plotting. Anyway, that was also very strange. But mostly you do memoirs, and you're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to say, I'm doing it for X or Y or Z. You sign a confidentiality, and you don't even tell your husband. So basically, it is a little weird. And then after a while, that kind of got me down, because I thought, I want to write for myself again. So I did. So since then, I've written a speculative fiction book, which is sort of sci-fi, and it's kind of out there, and it's got lots of sex in it and little violence and some language. So I thought, well, I can't use the same name I did when I was writing these books for Big Five publisher. So I use my middle names. So instead of Alice McVeigh, which is what I write my contemporary fiction and my historical fiction under, I use Spalding Taylor. So Spalding Taylor sounds a bit like a guy, which is kind of cool. And so I wrote my speculative fiction as Spalding Taylor. It's called Last Star Standing. And then I got bitten by the bug to write like Jane Austen, which apparently I can do. The Publishers Weekly says I can do it, so I must be able to do it a bit. So I think it's probably because I did all these years ghostwriting that I can kind of get into the voice a little, even of a complete, stunning, ridiculous genius like Austen. So that's what I'm doing now. And I'm using my own name for that because there's no sex or violence in it. So basically, my parents approved of the Jane Austen and they didn't like the science fiction. But anyway, you can't win them all. And so that's where I am. And I'm back to playing cello a little bit because I've got a concerto. So I am. Before I had the honor of speaking to you, I was actually practicing for the Elgar Cello Concerto, which I'm playing in honor of Dupre, who, as you know, brought me to Britain in the first place. And she played the Elgar Cello Concerto like nobody on earth. She has the performance of the Elgar Cello Concerto with Daniel Barenboim, her husband, and her then husband. And it's just to die for. So if anybody wants to hear how it ought to sound, I recommend Jacqueline Dupre's Elgar Cello Concerto with Daniel Barenboim. Just listen to it. It's amazing.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. So it sounds like you got a rainbow, a spaceship, a camel, and a giant, wonderful Groot inside of your brain. A whole world, or so to say, a whole set of worlds in your mind, because you got all this wonderful creativity. So where do you think this creativity of yours comes from?
I don't know about the creativity, but I know where the writing comes from. My grandfather, I don't want to brag, but I'm very proud of my grandfather, General Maxwell D. Taylor, was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he was the guy who led the 101st Airborne into Normandy on D-Day. And he was not only an amazing, brave, courageous, wonderful human being who had great impact on me, but he was a beautiful writer. And he wrote 6 books. And his 2 sons, one of them wrote film scripts in Hollywood. That's my uncle, Thomas Taylor. The other was my dad, who was a historian, a biographer. And then my mom is, to this day, sometimes, and she's quite old now, a professional editor. So my whole family is just really bookish. And the weirdness was, where did the music come from? And I think that was my mom's mom, because she was, and this is in the era when this just didn't happen, the 1920s. She was a professional violin player in Dallas, Texas. And she had a young ladies piano trio. She played the violin. So I think that was from my other side of the family. But yeah, and I also feel that, as I said to you when we were talking privately, growing up in Asia, which I did, because my dad was a diplomat, as well as a biographer, we didn't have any TV. So my sister and I did nothing but read, and I did nothing but make up stories. And then she edited them for me. And I said to you, it was to you, wasn't it? Or was it the guy yesterday? That on the that she was a very strict editor, my sister. And if I got too sentimental, she'd write croak. She'd write croak, C-R-O-A-K in the margins. But I forgave her, because when I did finally get published, Big Five, While the Music Lasts by Orion, then I dedicated it to her. I said, because you've been so good to me and you've edited my novels when they were such rubbish and I'm only 13, if I ever get published, I'll dedicate it to you. And I did. She's a good sister. So yeah, I think my whole family's very literary.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's the beautiful thing about having writers in the family, and heck, even some musicians in the family. It's like, yay, all right, I can pick up the pen too, maybe. And it's like, hey, the picking up the pen too, maybe become picking up the pen too magnificent, because you got all these awards for your book. So my goodness. So with all these genres that you've written, like, why was sci-fi the first one that you chose? Was that your favorite one at the time, or were you just that bored?
The first one that I wrote was not sci-fi. This is the one that I had the mega publisher for, Orion. This was it's very racy. It's based upon my life as a cellist with lots of London orchestras. So basically it was the backstage, the secret life of a symphony orchestra that we talked they marketed it as. And basically people think that symphony orchestras are full of very boring people because they wear very posh outfits and they just sort of come on stage and do everything perfectly. But in fact, it's full of really interesting people having mad love affairs. And so that's what I sort of wrote about. So that was my first genre. The second one was the sci-fi, and that was really weird. I never thought I'd write sci-fi, though I'm a Star Trek freak. And I also love Star Wars, actually. But I never thought I would write it. But that came to me in a sort of dream. I was in a meditative state because I was having energy healing. And this vision came to me of a young man underground, and I was looking through this metal shaft into underground about, I don't know, 300 feet or something, into this prison where this young man was imprisoned in an iron chair. And I couldn't get this guy out of my head. And so I thought, I've got to write him out of my head, even if I don't get a publisher, but I did get a publisher. I got Unbound, and that was lucky. But anyway, but not a big 5 publisher. Anyway, and so I had to write it because he wouldn't let me alone. And he narrates the whole book. And it was just a character that just came to me weirdly out of nowhere. And I think part of it was because I'm very feminine. I mean, I love makeup, I love clothes, even at my age, I'm very, but I always kind of secretly thought I missed out by not being a man. So I thought, well, it's too big a thing to miss out on. So I'll write a book as a man. So that's what I did. It seemed to me too big a thing to miss. So I did that. And it was really successful, actually. And people keep writing to me and saying, you're going to write a sequel. And I go, at the moment I'm writing Jane Austen, but I may write a sequel. Because he's a fascinating guy. He's all Australian, half Indigenous. He's got problems with the racism that he has to deal with. He has problems with the lack of confidence he has to deal with. He's kind of hyperactive. He's a fascinating guy. His character just came to me like a gift. And that's why I had to write him. I feel as if I know him. But I mean, what am I? I'm white. I'm female. I'm American. I'm American British. I'm not Australian. I'm not half Indigenous. He spoke to me. So there you go. He spoke to me. I had to do it.
Ah, there you go. So that wonderful spiritual out-of-body experience right there. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. And then it became magical fodder for the pages.
Yeah. I think one should always be open to stuff like that. People sometimes say to me, what advice would I give to other younger writers? And I kind of go, don't be like me in the first place, because I'd have found it much easier if I'd just picked a genre and stuck to it. Like if I just stuck to contemporary fiction, or just stuck to sci-fi, or just stuck to Jane Austen. But I'm one of these people, if I really feel passionate about something, I have to do it. So I wouldn't be like me. I would pick a genre and then I would just devote myself to it. Second piece of advice I would say is listen to that inner voice. The inner voice said to me, you have to write this book. And I knew I had to do it. And I think that a lot of people write books because they think, oh God, my agent wants me to write a book. Well, your agent may want you to write a book, but maybe you're meant to write a different kind of book. There's an inner voice inside all of us, I believe, for writers. And you know this because you're a writer. There's an inner voice, an inner compulsion. And if it isn't there, it might be okay, but it's not going to really satisfy you. And I think that's what we're after, isn't it? It's that moment when it comes together and it works. So those would be my 2 bits. You haven't asked me, but a lot of people do ask me. I would say, don't be like me because you'll run stick to it, but be like me. Wait until you feel that compulsion, because there are a lot of books out there, but you want yours to be special.
That's right, indeed. You want it to be special indeed. You want it to have 4 bunny ears instead of 2. That's right. That's right.
You are funny. Anyway, it's lovely talking to you, it really is. So is there anything else? Is there anything you'd like to ask me, or is up to you?
Oh, yeah. But you're definitely interested in the fact that you actually got to explore those multiple genres and explore your passions like that. Because, hey, you probably never got to where you are today because you actually, in a way, you probably, do you think your past work actually set you up for success with your Jane Austen series?
don't know. I really don't know. A lot of people denigrate Jane Austen because of not Jane Austen. Nobody does that. But I mean, the people who write Jane Austenesque stuff, because there's so many people who do it, and they do it with the best will in the world, and they just love it. But sometimes they're lovers of Austen rather than lovers of writing. I don't know. I've had some grief for it, because people say it's not completely original, but it is completely original. The first one I wrote, Jane Austen wrote a novella, her only novella, about a really wicked woman, and she is wicked. She goes off and has affairs for fun, which is not approved of in any era, but especially not approved of in this era. Then she tries to marry her daughter off to a man she hates. So she's really horrible to her daughter. Be like me saying to my beloved daughter, you know, you've got to marry so-and-so because I say so. Anyway, she's a horrible woman. And people, you know, don't care for the story much for that reason. She's a real anti-hero. She's a villainess. Anyway, but I thought, when did she become like that? What would this woman have been like? Very charming, very beautiful, make people do stuff. When she was only 16 and she hadn't been corrupted by the bright lights of London and the sort of society thing, the whole corrupting influence of society. So that's an entirely made up book. I made it all up myself. No, it was Jane Austen, except for this character, which, you know, in my case, she's not wicked at all. She's just mischievous. And so basically I wrote about her, instead of being 35 and wicked, when she was 16 and just manipulative. So I think it is creative. I do honestly feel it is creative, but it's not perhaps as creative as my first novels, where I just took orchestras and imagined from my own experience with orchestras what people behaved like and how they acted and how the music impacted on them. That might have been even more creative. Or Aidan. I mean, Aidan was a gift. Aidan, the guy, when I was looking down the shaft and I saw my sci-fi hero, that was just a gift. And he just came to me. And he came to me fully formed. He gave me the way he looked, the way he spoke. Everything just came to me. I was just rare. Well, it may just have been that part of me wanted to be a guy. Wanted to be indigenous and more interesting, not boring and white and female. And like, maybe I just wanted to explore something. But it was a gift.
Yeah, I wouldn't say you're boring. You got all this energy.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Just a day. You got
And
all
I do love tennis. I'm crazy about tennis, and I don't just play tennis. I watch tennis. At the moment, I'm so happy because the US Open is on, and I'm just like involved in the US Open, because for me, the US Open, well, Wimbledon is the best, but US Open is the second best. And the surface is very exciting, and things every second while I'm speaking to you, something's going to be happening that I'm missing. I have to catch up on. So I'm crazy about tennis. We don't go to Wimbledon anymore. It's a little too crowded, but we go to the tournament right before Wimbledon, my husband and me, because he plays as well. And we always go, and it's just so lovely to see the players in person, or some of them.
Yeah.
And I'm so sad. This is Serena's last tournament, so I'm dead sad about that. And I'm also sad because Emma Raducanu, you may not have heard of her, but she did win it last year. She's British and she lives locally, and she actually practices on the court next to us sometimes. And she is amazing, but she went out in the first round. So we were all really disappointed locally.
Oh.
So she's fantastic. She'll come back. She'll come back, I guarantee.
Heck yeah. That's right indeed. The comeback is usually sweeter too, because it's like, yeah, you got another origin story now. It's like, down with the dust, but hey, you're back and better than ever.
I don't know how old you are. You look really young to me, but Emma Raducanu is only 19. She has got so many years in front of her. She's going to come back. She's going to be amazing. She's already won the US Open. I mean, you can't do much better than that. But that was at 18. And maybe too soon. Maybe she needs to kind of step back and come back. That's where I am with it. Anyway, I recommend you watch her play. You'll be amazed.
Well, you got this follow-up book to the first magical Jane Austen novel called Harriet. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. So if that book was a food, what would it be and why?
It was food. Okay, I'm going to say it's going to be Marmite, and you're going to go, what on earth is Marmite? Marmite is a British thing, and the reason why I'm choosing Marmite is there's a joke about Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. I don't like it. I actually hate it. Anyway, it's the kind of thing you put on toast, and it's got a really strong flavor. It's savory, not sweet, but it's super strong. And my husband really likes it, and I really hate it. And the reason why I'm choosing Marmite is because I've had a lot of grief over her. Since most famous books, Emma, I'm sure you've read it. And Emma is this very rich and arrogant young woman. She's rich, handsome, and intelligent, and she knows it. And she mentors this young girl who's pretty but stupid called Harriet. And in my book, Harriet is pretty, but she isn't stupid. In fact, in my book, Harriet is manipulating Emma. So what I made was I tweaked Harriet's character a bit, and I made Harriet clever enough to pretend to be stupid. And I've got grief for it. So I've had all kinds of great reviews. And yes, it has won competitions, international competitions, but I've had a lot of grief for it. And I mean, this one woman, she wrote to me, sorry, I shouldn't actually do this, but I'm going to do this because this is where she's from Georgia. And she wrote, this book ought to be cast in light blue where it can burn, burn, burn. That was how angry. You got it. She was so angry, she thought my book should be booed. This woman from Georgia. So some people have taken against it, let me put it that way. So I would say my book would be Marmite, because unlike the first one, Susan, which everybody basically loved, because I took the character and did something a little bit different to the character, some people think it should burn, burn, burn.
Success, that's what I'm talking about. That's what that is.
I'll tell you something funny. My grandmother, the one who played the violin, I loved her to bits. She lived in South Carolina, and I used to speak to her on the phone a lot. And my husband would say, your accent is completely changed. Suddenly you're talking like this, and you sound just like your grandma. And I was thinking, it's like I just take it on, And I'm talking to her, and suddenly I'm Southern. And my favorite book when I was young was Gone with the Wind. And I saw that movie so many times. Anyway, yeah, so I can sort of do Gone with the Wind. So, yeah, I'd say Marmite. Yeah.
Well, you're the first one to say Marmite on the show.
I'm probably the last person to say Marmite.
That's right. Yeah.
You probably wouldn't like it. It's not a good taste. It's not a good taste.
Well, you said it's savory, not sweet, right?
Yeah. Oh, savory, yeah. Not wrong.
That's right. Indeed.
Unless you're my husband and he loves it. He has it every morning on his toast. And he's very English, my husband. He went to boarding school in Oxford and everything, and he loves Marmite. Not for me.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. I've always been loving the answer to that question, indeed. Gets folks to think, and then you get out of the blue answers like that, and it's like, all right, so that's a new food item. All right.
You can get it in America, but I don't recommend you do. But you can, yeah.
All righty, duly noted. Avoid it like the plague. All right, so coming down to the magical question every guest gets to receive, and that is, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but you're still in 2022, what advice would you give to yourself?
Oh, golly, what a good question. Yes, I heard you ask that in one of the other ones, and I didn't realize you always asked it. I think what I do is, I think my whole life has been kind of a conflict between my musical side and my literary side. And I think I should have gone with the literary earlier. And the reason I think this is because my nerve is not that good. I take something called beta blockers when I have a solo on the cello. And beta blockers are, they're quite an important pill. Basically, if you have high blood pressure, they lower it. And they're also fantastic at reducing your nerves. So basically, when I was in the in that late 1990s. I mean, we were allowed beta blockers in this country, but it wasn't approved by the FDA in America. I was smuggling beta blockers. I was bringing them into America because all my professional friends were buying off of me. They were desperate for beta blockers. I was a drug smuggler. now you can get hold of them in America. I don't need a drug smuggle anymore. But basically, they are amazing. But what that tells you is I wasn't meant to be a cellist, really, because I get too nervous, and I need the beta blockers. And so, in a sense, I'm a natural writer and not quite so natural a cellist. So I would say to myself, go with what's most natural to you. I'd probably also say don't drug smuggle.
So instead of being a streets pharmacist, you're an orchestra pharmacist.
That's it. Yes, exactly. I'm serious though. A lot of my friends wanted those.
I guess the affairs had it on top of it too. Let me stop.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on in American orchestras as well, I can tell you. There's a lot of stuff going on in American orchestras. I had a friend who was on Broadway, and she was given a trial as leader. This means the concertmaster, you would call it concertmaster, of the orchestra on Broadway. And so this was her big chance. So she goes into this pit on Broadway, and she has this big solo. You know what happens to her during her big violin solo? Absolute accident. Somebody behind her kicks her chair forward, and her bow goes skittering over the string. Not a joke. People think classical music is all Mr. and Mrs. Nice Guy. It is not.
Dang.
Dang is right. In fact, dang is mild.
That jealous, huh? My goodness.
Yeah.
Ugh. Man.
True story.
Yep. The best and worst part about business is the people. Any business, that's the
so
best
true.
and the worst part about any business.
Yes, it is true. There are loads of wonderful, wonderful, wonderful musicians, and they're wonderful people. But you get bad apples in every profession. It doesn't matter what profession. And there are people who go around. On Goodreads. Don't know if you know about Goodreads. Not everybody goes on it, but anyway, just giving 1 stars to everybody who writes Jane Austenesque fiction that's better than theirs. And but, this happens in every profession, and you just have to get on with life and just say, that's fine. I think, and don't be like that.
Amen to that. Amen to that. That's right. And if I'm not mistaken, you got at least 4 more Jane Austen-esque novels to come, right?
Yes, I'm writing the third now. But what's been tricky about this one is my husband needs me. He doesn't often need me. He's a professor of music, and normally he's just gets his own thing. But he's been commissioned to write a book, which is not academic. So it's written for anybody. And so it's going to have a long print run, and it's going to be for general public. And my husband only writes kind of heretofore and furthermore and indeed. And basically he's had to hire me. Well, he hasn't hired me because he's not paying me, but I'm having to rewrite it so that people can understand it. So at the moment I'm kind of editing for my husband, and my book is kind of waiting until I finish that. But he comes first.
So it sounds like we're going to get both husband and wife on this podcast. That's what I'm hearing.
He'll tell you stuff about me you wouldn't want to hear. Anyway, no, he's a great guy, and we do help each other out. To be fair, I couldn't do it without him. He edits my books, I edit his books. But this one's hard because most of his books are written for professors, and they cost $100, and only libraries buy them. But this one's different. This one's for people who are just interested in music in 1900 to the First World War. And I have to kind of dumb it down. I'm good at dumbing stuff down.
That means you're a master communicator.
I don't know about that, but I can dumb stuff down.
Okay, fine. We'll give you. We won't give you the full 10th degree black belt. We'll just give you the black belt then.
Okay. That's really sweet. I'll take the black belt. In dumbing down. I'm just not as smart as he is. That's all it is to it.
It's all good. It's all good. You still got a good brain on your shoulders. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. We don't allow people to dumb their own selves down for no reason. That's right, indeed. Don't beat yourself down. We don't allow that here. We want you to stay confident. Keep your shoulders up. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Because you deserve it. So my goodness, so speaking of deserve, folks deserve to follow you and need to keep up with your journey and be on the lookout for all your future work. So for those who need to do just that, what's the best way for folks to do so?
AliceMcVeigh.com. That's Alice, like Alice in Wonderland, and McVeigh, McVeigh. And my novels are on Kindle Unlimited. Sorry, my Jane Austenesque novels are on Kindle Unlimited. The other ones have different publishers, so get them anywhere, really. Last Star Standing, you get anywhere. There's an audiobook of Susan, which has won awards, and it's a really lovely audiobook because this woman who speaks way better than me and not nearly so fast, an actress did it, so that's good. And yeah, so thank you if interested. If anybody's interested, I'm really grateful. Thanks. I'm really grateful to you for asking me on. I've had a great time.
Yeah, that's good. Well, mission accomplished indeed. That's right. Didn't even have to use the tree joke, so it's definitely a good time indeed. That's
right. Thank you.
That's right. Another one survives. So there you have it, folks. Follow the amazing Alice on her wonderful site and all of her social medias, indeed, and keep on the lookout for the future novels that she's got cooking, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right. The writing chef is in the kitchen. That's right. In and out the kitchen, since she's helping out hubby as well. She's helping him create his own wonderful book version of Michelangelo. That's right. That's right, indeed.
I'm glad you didn't say I was making Michelangelo in the kitchen because I'm a really bad cook. Anyway, lovely meeting you. Really enjoyed it. I loved every minute. Thank you.
Well, my pleasure indeed. So any parting words for the folks listening at home?
Take care.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. The one listening right now. Thanks a bunch for sharing some of your time out of your day to listen to this podcast. To take it to the next level, be sure to share it with someone that you care about and that would get something out of this podcast too. Advance others to advance yourself.